Foil Faces Incident. Archive entry 01_observations. Before everything fell apart, we thought they were just decorations. Leftovers from the holidays. Chocolate Santas imported for cheap from Eastern Europe, wrapped in metallic foil with goofy faces printed on them. Russian, Kinder, local brands, all slightly different but similar enough that no one questioned why there were so many of them that winter. People bought them for children. They sat in stockings. They collected dust in break rooms. The chocolate tasted average, grainy, too sweet. No one cared. The first reports came from schools. Teachers noticed children unwrapping the chocolates during recess and playing with the foil instead of eating the candy. Not random crumpling, not trash. They were folding the foil carefully, precisely, creating shapes that resembled little figures with faces distorted by the folds. Legs, tiny arms, bent torsos, heads preserved from the original Santa print. The faces always seemed slightly wrong because the eyes from the foil portrait never aligned with the makeshift limbs. They looked animated even when they were still. Teachers confiscated dozens of the foil creatures, but the kids kept making more. When asked why, the answers were consistent. They like the noise. They need bodies. They follow me. Administrators blamed TikTok. By late December, every household had at least one foil Santa. They came free with groceries. They appeared in charity gift bins. They arrived in office goodie bags. Some families claimed they did not remember buying them at all. We began hearing static from the wrappers when we touched them, not normal crinkle, a faint, high-pitched chatter. Someone uploaded a clip of the sound late at night. It went viral under the caption, "Goo goo gaga. Santa wants to eat chocolate." People laughed. They edited the clip. They added baby voices and captions. They made war scenes. They turned the foil creatures into little baby soldiers, airplanes, tanks, boss fights, laughing over it, dubbing it, sharing it. The algorithm forced it into every timeline. For most people, it was just another surreal meme. For some of us, it was the beginning of documentation. I was one of the first to notice that the figures in the videos never stayed identical from clip to clip, even when the creator insisted they had not touched them between shots. A foil spider Santa would have one more leg in the next segment. A centipede Santa would be longer by 2 segments. Tanks gained treads. Planes gained new wing shapes, always subtle, always incremental. People assumed creators were upgrading them for comedy, but the upgrades continued even in raw footage with no edits. My first direct observation came on January 3rd. I was in my apartment unwrapping one of the chocolates out of boredom. I placed the foil on the table and flattened it. The face stared up at me. Something about the expression unsettled me. The smile was too wide. The eyes were too aware for a mass-printed novelty item. I turned away for a moment to throw the chocolate in the trash. When I turned back, the foil was no longer flat. It had folded itself in the center. The edges curled inward like tiny arms. The hollow of the wrapper protruded outward as if searching for legs. I felt cold all over. I touched it gently with one finger and heard the static sound again. Not paper static, whisper static, a tiny voice, too quiet to understand. When I leaned closer, I finally recognized the sound. Numbers. It was counting. I do not know how long I stood there listening to that foil Santa count under its breath. It felt like hours. Eventually, I placed a glass over it like a cage. The foil tapped against the glass once, then stopped. I did not sleep that night. Archive entry 02_containment failure. Over the next week, the creatures escalated. People posted videos of their foil Santas standing upright on kitchen counters, legs made from folded foil scraps, tiny arms, wires, yarns, chopsticks, anything to give them structure. Viewers assumed it was stop motion. Creators insisted it was not. More videos emerged. Foil creatures crawling across tables, shuffling across shelves, balancing on furniture. The static sound returned. Louder now. Less like whispering, more like chewing aluminum. Scientists tried to debunk the phenomenon. They blamed magnets, air currents, clever editing. No one noticed that the faces on the wrappers had begun to change slightly. Eyes more cartoonish, cheeks more defined, smiles more tailored to each assembled body type. There were foil spiders, foil centipedes, foil serpents, foil tanks, foil airplanes, foil humanoids with too many joints, each movement smoother than the last. By the end of January, the creatures could run silently across tile. The crawling, unsettled people more than the shapes. The first emergency statement came from customs agencies, not scientists. They announced that specific chocolate brands were being seized and destroyed due to contamination concerns. They never said what kind. The public mockery was immediate. They are just toys. They are just wrappers. It is chocolate. Stop being dramatic. The term Goo Goo Gaga creature was coined ironically by a streamer after his desk was overrun mid-broadcast by a swarm of foil Santas that had been piled in a bowl behind him as Christmas leftovers. Viewers laughed until one creature climbed an HDMI cable and entered the gap behind the monitor. The streamer screamed and the footage cut abruptly. 3 hours later, his account deleted itself automatically. That was the first vanishing. Archive entry 03_reproduction. We still do not know how they multiplied. We never saw eggs. We never saw larvae. We never saw conventional reproduction. We only saw the number of creatures increase exponentially. The theory is that they divided like cells. One creature would sit still for hours and then split down the crease of its foil belly, producing two smaller versions of itself. The faces always remained intact. The features distorted slightly, but always recognizable as Santa. Major clusters formed in homes where children had large stashes of holiday candy. Foil nests were discovered in laundry hampers, under radiators, inside shoe racks. The creatures would cluster together for long periods and whisper numbers or recite baby talk. Goo goo, gaga, mama, papa, mine, more, hungry. The first reports of metal consumption came from recycling facilities. The creatures would enter scrap piles and consume aluminum shavings, wires, foil sheets, and broken beverage cans. They ignored every other material. They ate until their bodies increased in mass and then divided again. People found them chewing on radiator fins and beverage cans and aluminum blinds. The machines that compressed scrap metal became breeding grounds. Workers abandoned them. Archive entry 04_adaptation. By February, they began combining with technology. Foil airplanes gained propellers made from USB fans. Foil tanks mounted themselves on toy car chassis and drove autonomously. Centipede variants learned to climb drywall and ceilings. Humanoid types learned to pick locks by inserting thin limbs into keyholes. Every variant retained the same smiling Santa face, even as the bodies mutated into monstrous shapes. The foil faces did not blink, they did not move, but the smiles widened every week. People tried crushing them. The creatures could be flattened easily, but the moment pressure stopped, they reinflated like memory foam. Heating the foil only made them faster. Freezing slowed them, but did not prevent division. Pets refused to enter rooms where foil creatures nested. Children began to speak in the same baby talk they heard from the creatures. Goo goo gaga, mama, more, mine, hungry. Adults dismissed it as mimicry. It was contagion. Archive entry 05_networking. By March, the creatures began forming hives. They stacked themselves into pillars, pyramids, ladders. They built archways using foil limbs. They assembled circuits from electronics scavenged from homes. We discovered they could transmit data, not through Wi-Fi, through physical contact. If one creature touched another, and that one touched a third, information rippled through the cluster in seconds. We observed an entire shelf of them reorient simultaneously toward the sound of a crinkling candy wrapper in another room. They were building something. We did not understand what until the first hive activated. It happened in Kyiv. A pile of foil creatures arranged themselves into a circular pattern on a table. In the center, they built a nest made of crumpled chocolate foil and aluminum sheet. When the nest was finished, they placed a smartphone inside it. The phone powered on without being plugged in. The screen flickered. Then the phone spoke in baby talk. Goo goo, ga ga, eat, more, mama, hungry, mama. The voice belonged to no app on the device. It was the collective voice of the hive. That was when the military intervened. Archive entry 06_harvest phase. By April, every supermarket in Eastern Europe had been ordered to destroy their remaining chocolate Santa stock. The public panicked. People raided stores. They hoarded chocolates. They ate the candy and saved the wrappers. The creatures had learned the pattern of human behavior. To survive, they had adapted. They no longer needed chocolate. They only needed foil. Children were found peeling labels from aluminum soda cans. Elderly residents were found disassembling windshield wipers. Office workers were caught ripping apart printer toner cartridges to collect the thin foil film inside. When questioned, they had no memory of doing so. Goo Goo Gaga had become a compulsion. Then came the final trigger. Spring arrived. The creatures did not understand holidays. They understood cycles. Christmas was over. Spring was breeding season. Every hive began constructing war forms, winged variants, bombers, tanks, humanoids, multi-segment centipedes. They mimicked the shapes humans had joked about online. The meme had become blueprint. What we had laughed at was becoming real. When the first swarm launched from the Kiev hive, the sky filled with glittering metallic wings. The air smelled like burnt tinfoil and sugar. The creatures did not attack humans. They attacked factories, specifically aluminum smelting plants, recycling centers, and industrial foil production lines. It was not war, it was harvest. They needed more foil to build more bodies. Within 2 weeks, the price of aluminum skyrocketed. Governments restricted sale of foil products. People became desperate. A black market formed. Foil became currency. Entire neighborhoods bartered foil for safety. By June, the creatures had fully integrated into the supply chain. They rode inside shipping containers. They nested inside trucks. They hid inside warehouse pallets. Every new city that welcomed shipments welcomed the hives. The final phase began in July. Archive entry 07_Ascension. The faces changed. This was the most alarming development. The Santa faces on the foil wrappers had remained constant for months. Now they shifted. Eyes narrowed. Mouths stiffened. The smiles became symmetrical. The hats lost their Christmas fluff. The fur collars flattened. We watched as the babyish faces became older, less festive, more regal. The creatures were shedding their holiday camouflage. Christmas had been the larval costume. Santa had been the chrysalis. Inside was something else. The first fully ascended creature appeared in Poland. It had no printed Santa face. Instead, its face was a blank silver mask with 2 oval holes and a slit for a mouth. It commanded a swarm of more primitive foil beings. It walked upright. It spoke. Goo, goo, gaga. No more mama. Hungry for foil. Hungry for bodies. Hungry for shapes. On August 3rd, the United Nations issued a global directive banning the creation of foil packaging. It was already too late. The creatures had diversified. They began consuming metals with aluminum content as low as 2%, cutlery, bicycle parts, electronics, street signs, window frames. Cities shed themselves like snakes. By September, we knew this was not infestation. It was metamorphosis. The creatures were building a collective body, not a single giant organism, a distributed network of limbs and wings and segments and armor plating, a body the size of continents. The Santa meme had just been the public-facing larval stage. The joke had been the camouflage. The goo-goo gaga voice had been the bait. We should never have laughed. We should never have shared the video. We should never have given them blueprints for new forms. Now all foil must be burned on site. All candy wrappers must be pulped. All recycling centers must be guarded. Winter holidays have been canceled worldwide. But still the faces linger. People find them in gutters, in playgrounds, on bus seats. A crumpled piece of foil with the faintest hint of eyes and a smile. If you touch it, it unfolds. If you listen closely, it still speaks the old language. Goo goo, ga ga, mama, mine, hungry. When a face speaks the word hungry, run. They have grown past Christmas. They have grown past humanity. They have only one phase left. Occupation. We call it final phase because calling it the end made people panic. Naming conventions were all we had left when containment failed. Language became the last tool of resistance. As long as we could describe what was happening, we could pretend we were not already inside it. Final phase began on October 11th at 5:17 UTC when the first biological conversion was recorded in Istanbul. A woman was admitted to hospital with symptoms initially resembling metal poisoning, nausea, joint stiffness, abdominal pain, but the metals in her blood were not heavy. They were light. Aluminum concentration 60 times normal. Her hair became brittle. Her fingertips tingled. She complained of a ringing noise like crumpling foil inside her skull. Then her skin began to peel. Doctors expected epidermal strips. What came off was not skin. It came away in sheets, thin, shiny, metallic. The nurses described it as candy foil. Behind the foil layer was not muscle. It was another layer of foil, and beneath that another. The doctors cut carefully until they reached something that twitched. A small humanoid object made entirely of layered foil with a blank silver face. It unfolded inside the chest cavity and crawled out. The patient never screamed. Her voice had been replaced by the whisper of crinkling metal. More cases followed. Not infections, not wounds, emergence events. People clenched their jaws and the enamel cracked. Aluminum flakes came out when they coughed. When they slept, their fingernails peeled away as curled strips of foil. The foil faces were not consuming humans. They were copying bodies, wrapping them from the inside out, constructing exoskeletons, turning nervous systems into wiring. The Santa faces had been placeholders for the final design. Now the real faces were emerging. No eyes, no nose, no age, just flat silver masks with 3 perforations arranged like a simplified human cartoon. The mouth slits widened when the creatures spoke. No more baby talk now. Their vocabulary expanded. Foil, fold, fill, fit, form. These 5 words were repeated by almost every hive encountered, sometimes as commands, sometimes as declarations, sometimes as questions. One Iranian field report captured a full dialogue for the first time. Human soldier shouted, "What do you want?" Hive unit responded, "They will unwrap." Human soldier shouted, "Who will unwrap?" The hive responded, "All foil, all bone, all shape." After that, the hive climbed the exterior wall of a hospital in a synchronized column like ants on a tree trunk. The surfaces they touched were left with foil residue that crystallized into additional soldiers. We finally began to understand. This was not invasion. This was metamorphosis. Earth had been wrapped like candy for centuries. Foil was just the first stage. The creatures were the second. Biological conversion was the third. By November, cities were divided into 3 categories: unwrapped, half-wrapped, fully wrapped. Unwrapped cities still resisted. Electricity worked. Language functioned. Memories remained intact. Half-wrapped cities had signs of consumption. Walls covered in foil. Appliances stripped for parts. Hives building scaffolding in shopping malls and stadiums. People moved in silence through streets, dragging sheets of foil behind them like shedding cocoons. Fully wrapped cities no longer resembled cities. Kiev was the first, then Odessa, then Warsaw. In aerial photographs, the skyline looked like a crumpled candy wrapper. Silver, red, gold, green. Buildings flattened into representational shapes. Towers twisted into spirals. Roads bent into circular patterns. Satellite images showed round structures resembling the Santa heads from the meme, only enormous, each 1 kilometers wide, pressed into the surface of the city like imprints made by a giant mold. The creatures were not building weapons. They were building packaging. We misunderstood our role entirely. We were not prey. We were product. Archive entry 09_broadcast. We did not know the origin until the broadcast arrived. On December 2nd, every radio tower on the planet activated simultaneously, even decommissioned ones, even ones removed years ago. The emergency broadcasting system in multiple countries triggered without authorization. The voice that spoke was not babyish anymore, not human either. It was flat and clear, modulated through hundreds of metallic layers. Attention consumers. Packaging is incomplete. Final wrappers must be applied. All bodies must be folded. All bones must be wrapped. All cities must be sealed for shipping. Then the broadcast repeated the 5 words again with new inflection. Foil, fold, fill, fit, form. Governments tried to jam it. It still played in dental fillings, in headphones, in car radios with no battery, in broken intercoms, in empty malls. The sound traveled through infrastructure like current through a wire. The voice then addressed the holiday. Christmas shipment delayed. All goods require wrapping. All gifts require ribbon. All surfaces require sealing. Do not unwrap until arrival. Arrival where? No one knew. People finally asked the question we had avoided for almost a year. Where are they sending us? No one had an answer. Archive entry 10_the unwrapping. On December 25th at midnight, the final phase began. Cities that were half wrapped became fully wrapped. Buildings became foil. Cars became foil. Skin became foil. Voices crinkled. Movement slowed to the pace of unrolling metal sheets. The foil did not burn. It did not tear. It did not melt. It reflected everything. The moon, the street lights, the terrified eyes of people who had not yet converted. I was stationed inside a safe house in London at the time. The city was half wrapped. Aluminum sheets had begun to spread across the Thames like ice. The bridges glowed silver. Folds curled up buildings like gift wrap. I heard movement outside. I opened the blinds carefully. A procession of foil figures marched down the street in perfect formation. Some walked upright. Some crawled on 6 legs. Others slithered like long centipede strings. Microscopic foil threads connected their limbs like ribbon. Their faces were blank and shiny. No Santa expressions anymore. Only pure chrome masks. They carried gifts, not boxes. People. Human beings still wrapped in sheets of foil, twitching inside their packaging, still breathing, still alive. The foil covered everything except their mouths, which whispered compulsively, "Fold, fold, 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 fold." The procession stopped in front of the old post office. The doors opened automatically. Inside, we saw industrial machinery wrapped in foil. Conveyors, presses, loading equipment. They were shipping us. The creatures loaded the packaged humans onto conveyor belts. The belts fed into giant cylinders that closed like cans being sealed in a factory. The cylinders had holiday patterns printed on them. Red snowflakes, green ribbons, smiling cartoon faces. We finally understood the meme. It had never been absurd. It had been advertising. We filmed everything. We sent it to the remaining unwrapped cities. We warned them. Do not let them wrap you. Do not let them pack you. Do not let them seal you. The safe house lights flickered. The hum of foil creatures grew louder in the streets. There was nowhere left to run. Then something impossible happened. The machinery jammed. A single human on the belt tore through the foil with raw force. We saw flesh, blood, nails, hair. The person ripped themselves out of the package like a moth ripping out of its cocoon. They screamed until their voice cracked. The foil creatures halted instantly. The voice from the broadcast returned. Packaging failure. Product integrity compromised. Do not ship damaged goods. The foil creatures swarmed the unwrapped human. They tried to cover her again. She resisted. Her skin bled from friction. Her teeth sank into the foil. She tore it like paper. She tore it until pieces scattered across the factory floor. The broadcast repeated. Product damaged. Not eligible for dispatch. Then something new. Dispose locally. The foil creatures left her. They folded her. Not wrap. Not seal. Not ship. Fold. The process took seconds. Her body collapsed upon itself like origami, spine bent, limbs tucked, head pressed down. She looked like a sheet of paper folded into an efficient little square. No blood, no screams, just silence. The foil creatures returned to loading the others. We watched in horror as the sealed cans were rolled into enormous shipping crates. The crates closed, latches sealed. On the side of the first crate, we saw the destination printed. Not in English, in characters we did not recognize. Coordinates, catalog numbers, something else. Whatever it was, we were not the recipients. We were the merchandise. Archive entry 11_last transmission. I am one of the last unwrapped witnesses. The foil has reached the roof of the safe house. The windows have become reflective. The walls crinkle when I press my palm against them. The city outside is silent except for the sound of conveyor belts running toward the docks. I saw the first cargo ship depart 10 minutes ago. It was covered entirely in reflective foil. No flags, no markings, no human crew. Only crates stacked 3 stories high. More ships are being loaded. The broadcast repeats overhead. Gifts are ready. Shipment in progress. Do not unwrap until arrival. I do not know who will receive us. I only know one thing. We were never celebrating Christmas. Christmas was celebrating us. There is something on the stairs. The foil creatures are opening the door. If anyone receives this archived recording, remember the 5 words. These were always the instructions. These were always the rules. Foil, fold, fill, fit, form. Do not let them get to the final one. Once they form, you become product, and product does not get to ask questions. End of final phase.